We're starting with the work sessions now, and we'll build it. We're starting with the work sessions, then we'll build the consent agenda. Okay.
All right. Paul Jones on Zoom. Can you hear us? Doing a mic check.
Commissioner, I can hear you.
Fantastic. We can hear you. All right. Welcome this afternoon to our Board of County Commissioners meeting. We have all three commissioners here. It's good to have you with us. We always start with a prayer, reading thought, and the Pledge of Allegiance. And we have Chaplain Linda Walton, who has already volunteered to do the prayer. So thank you for that. Was anybody willing to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay. Come on up. Yep.
Let's pray together. Our dear Father in heaven, we are very grateful to be able to do this. We know of many people and countries around the world where this is not allowed. And so first of all, we want to thank you for our country, for the freedoms that we have to gather together and to make decisions to benefit the community. Father, we are grateful for all of the people that are involved in making our life so wonderful in Utah Valley, whether it's the sheriffs or whether it's the commissioners or whether it's the faculty members, whoever it might be, Father. We are just so grateful that you've given them knowledge and energy and direction. And so today, Father, as we go about this meeting, we pray that your wisdom will be here, your spirit will be here, and that each individual that participates will respect everyone else in the room and everyone else in the county. And we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Come on up.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, individual, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you to both of you for participating with us in that. We have 3 work session items that we're going to go to first before we build our agenda. And so we will just go in the order that we have them printed. Before we go to item number 1, though, I want to consult with my fellow commissioners on a time limit for number 1. What's your thoughts on how long?
How many are here to speak to this?
There's the presentation. There's 3.
Okay. And after for public comment, 1, 2, 3, perhaps.
Yeah.
And we might have 1 or 2 online, perhaps might not. I don't know, 2-3 minutes. Would that suffice?
Each.
Say like a total of maybe 15 minutes.
So 15 minutes.
For the presentation and
Will that
comments?
work for the presentation part?
And then
Okay.
the comments.
And then comments after?
Typically,
Okay. So we'll go to approximately 20 after. 20 after.
Right.
Come on up. Thank you for being here. Oh, this is a presentation discussion from Saratoga Springs City on concerns related to mining and grazing extraction activities on Lake Mountain.
Commissioners, thank you for letting us have this opportunity to discuss this item with you today. My name is Ken Young, Community Development Director for the City of Saratoga Springs. We have been looking rather closely at our opportunities to expand our urban area for quite some time now, and I'm sure, as you're well aware, Saratoga Springs is a rapidly growing community, currently around 43,000. And we expect that growth to continue well into the future. A lot of our growth has been occurring along the sides of Lake Mountain, and it is this particular area that we have concern. As our urban area expands, the interfacing or interaction between different uses becomes of greater concern. And so that's why we would like to discuss options with you, how the commission would like to see us move forward. We have considered various options. One of those includes annexing those properties. Some of those properties may or may not be viable annexations that we can look at into the future. And other options that we've looked at include rezoning, which is one thing that we would like to discuss with you today. Currently, those properties in the county are zoned G, it's mining and grazing 1, and we are interested in seeking possibly a G1 or a grazing zoning on these properties. The concern or the desire that we're looking at with that is some of the mining operations or gravel operations that currently exist or plan to develop in those areas do not always have the best interaction with the residential land uses that are otherwise existing or coming into that area, especially as we're talking about noise, as we're talking about accessibility through existing properties in the city that are residential in nature. And so we're very concerned about as growth occurs that we want to have the best type of compatible land uses in the area. I'm going to turn a few minutes over to our current planning director, David Stroud. Let him provide a little further background on our interest in coming before you. And then Chris Porter, our councilman, is also here, and he would like to have a few words as well.
Thank you, Commissioners. Again, David Stroud. I'm the Planning Director for Saratoga Springs. To mirror the comments made by Mr. Young, we do have concerns, obviously. As our city grows and expands, the primarily residential land uses we see coming in the areas of the gravel and mining operations. Now, true, a lot of that growth depends on some of that product that comes from those locations. We're not asking those to stop. We're just looking for are there anything that we can do to work together to limit the impact that some of these operations have on how our city grows and expands. Now, we did come to you probably 3 years ago. Commissioner Lee, I believe you're on the commission at that time as well, seeking a rezone. We had some good discussion, I remember, at the commissioner level. Ultimately, it was not passed as the reason that we did request. And so we're here today to see if we can work together. We met with staff, with Mr. Armstrong, to see what avenues we could possibly pursue, to see if we can, make, what uses you have, what uses we have, how we can work those together to make those as compatible as we can make it. And so we would love to get some feedback, maybe some discussion with you today regarding that. So as our city grows and expands, and we know that, you're probably aware that Saratoga Springs is probably one of the fastest growing cities in the state. The growth is coming, it's there. We have several master plan developments in that area that are just waiting for things to come along, utilities, and we could have, 4,000 units in a development down there near some of these operations. And so we'd just like to receive some constructive feedback, discussion with you today to see what direction we can go forward in.
Does your master plan encompass an eventual plan for this area?
We have, on our general plan, we'll have our growth, our annexation overlay, which would include that. A lot of that area, as you go up the hillside, the mountainside, would be a rural residential designation. Of course, with the foothill corridor coming in, sure, some of those areas around some interchanges could probably be commercial. But for the most part, the growth that we see going up the mountain, if it's not in a master planned area, most likely would be a low density residential.
But it does include your annexation plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioners, thank you for the time today to speak on this topic. I'm here representing our mayor and the council. Mayor was called away at the last minute for some work obligations, and so he asked me to come speak on behalf of the city and our citizens. And I would just like to give an example. We just recently finished working with Camp Williams, our northern neighbor, on a compatibility use study. We're updating that study currently. I'm sure you're aware of that as well. But that's essentially what we're looking to do here is to work with the county to find compatible uses that belong next to a residential neighborhood or a commercial neighborhood, so that we can continue to move forward with the growth that we're seeing in our city. As was pointed out, we are one of the fastest growing cities in the state. We're the fastest growing by number in the county. We're going to see growth in these areas before the next census. In the next 10 years, we're going to see houses built here, and so we need to make sure that we are taking that into account when we plan what uses need to go into these areas. So we're just looking to work together to find a plan that works so that we can have compatible uses that benefit our city and benefit our citizens and your citizens. That's our job is to do what's in their best interest. And so I think that's what we need to focus on. I'll yield the rest of the time you have a few more things.
So the information that we sent you included a letter from Sitla. Troy Harold, I believe, was going to be here today. Oh, there he is back there. He may want to take a minute or two as well. We with that letter also submitted a map of the properties that we've identified in their various ownerships that we are interested in seeing some kind of an arrangement or plan on how we work together on this. So I mentioned earlier two things that we were considering as options of moving forward. One is, of course, to annex. The other is to seek rezoning through the county. But a third would be something that we can explore further. And a reason why we wanted to be here talking with you here today is, are there alternatives to making code amendments in the zoning documents that would provide greater restrictions or greater separation requirements between various types of operations as they interface with the urban area? So those are things that we would be willing to explore as well. So if Troy, did you want to take a minute?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kyle Paisley. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development and Planning for SITLA for the School Trust Lands Administration. Over the last couple of months, we have worked quite closely with Saratoga Springs on the areas that were delineated in the letter that we provided to you in the exhibit that was attached. As we transition as an organization, we are looking to transition those uses on those parcels that have been identified to move from the mining and other uses that we have had. Those are now ending their life cycle, and we are looking to move that into residential development and perhaps a little neighborhood commercial development that would be a part of that. So we are supportive of Saratoga Springs coming before you to look at annexation coming into the city and moving forward with our plans for development at this point. So happy to entertain any questions, and we'll stay close if you have any. So okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I apologize. I haven't actually met in person Troy before or Kyle, so I just figured that I was talking about the right person there. But we appreciate your time here today, and we're ready to answer any questions or discuss further how we might move forward.
So just a question or two, maybe briefly. Are you leaning more towards annexation than you are to having us do a rezone change, or what's kind of the direction that you're looking at? Because it sounds like an annexation with the Sitla land makes sense, but why not? I'm just kind of a question on where you want to go.
There are some imminent annexations, especially with Sitla, that we are exploring. And so some may occur sooner than later. There are other properties where some either existing operations are located or are planned, or at least that there are rights available for further operations to be developed there, that we have not explored those annexation areas. And a lot of those might exist in the areas beyond the Sitla property. So we, of course, would need to plan for how those annexations would work. But
And it's always interesting, you know, it's kind of the chicken or the egg thing, right? If we have mining operations going on there and then the houses start to creep up, you know, who's there first? What's the proper route to it when we're talking about buffer zones, you know, or how we're compatible one with another. Some of the zoning, if the city starts creeping up onto the mining areas, obviously that's fully in your control on if you're going to have that buffer zone or allow for that zoning to happen. And so I'm really curious on that and how that works. If I remember correctly, the last time, I mean, there's a lot of this that's out of our control. I don't know how much. Some of it with the state, I don't know how much we have full control over. Bryce and Rob could probably answer that, but there's some areas that we do have control and some that we just don't have control over.
right, and we do recognize that. I suppose what we're attempting to do is to limit the impact as much as we can. We understand that there are some existing operations that we can't do anything about. There are some existing rights that we can't do anything about.
Right.
But perhaps the further expansion of those is what we're trying to limit as much as we can so that there is a good compatibility where we can achieve it.
Okay.
If you were asking for a rezone, what would you be targeting? What zone?
Well, with the county, it would be the grazing zone.
Right. So what would you want? You'd want to just change it to grazing, like where the mining and grazing zone. What would you want to change it to? Are you looking like an RA5? Are you looking like an A40?
But we're fine with the grazing zone. That
Just the G.
Yeah, just the G. And of
Okay.
course, that would likely grandfather in certain developments or properties.
Yeah. Okay.
Which we've done in the past.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why you're looking at that, I'm sure.
Right.
And it sounds like this is more of a controlled approach for the city, have greater control down the road for
Yes.
what developments do happen, particularly mining.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. There was a couple of people who wanted some comments. Come on up. One at a time. Make sure
Thank
state,
you
make
for
sure and state
meeting
your
us.
name.
I'm Cole Peck. I'm an owner of Peck Rockin' Products. We own a landfill. Excuse me. So we lease from Sitla, and just to give you guys a little history about Sitla, you have one division that sells everything. And I hope you all know what Sitla does. They raise money for schools, and you have the real estate division that just liquidates everything. And then you have the mining division or leasing of ground that generate money forever. And it just continues to grow. So we actually have a lease with Sitla that generates money for the Saratoga pit. And then Peck Rock has one for a landfill in Saratoga, and one for rock and one for gravel. And so we generate a lot of money for the school kids. And to give you a little history, we're up Grandview to the very top. We are in the county. And the heartburn I have with it is these cities come in and they don't want the gravel, but yet my grandfather was there 70, 80 years ago. It was called Clay Pit Road, which we opposed Saratoga when they went to build their town going up Grandview, and it's on their record. And they said, oh, no, we understand you're there, and it's fine, and we'll build a road with 6 inches of pavement and for all the truck traffic. And then my dad's former company, which is Thomas J. Peck, my uncle owns it. My dad has since passed. They mine clay for interstate brick, which if you have brick on your house, it comes from these areas. And there's several along that, Lake Mountain area. And so the hard part for us is they come to us and said, no, we understand, But then a few years later, when we tried to just change our zoning to make more money for the school kids, they opposed us, and Rob knows this. We have a landfill out there that can only operate from 9 to 3 because they decided to build a school on that road. And they wanted safety for the kids. And we're going, we told you that in the beginning. So little by little, Saratoga is, I'm not being mean, but they're kind of a very selfish town. They move in, creep close, complain about the noise, complain about the trucks, complain about the traffic, all of it, the safety, but yet they're not willing to take responsibility and move the schools where they need to be. And they talk out of one side of their mouth saying, oh, we don't want the impact. But if you really are smart about it and think about it, where is their gravel and their rock products going to come from? Because if it's not mined in Saratoga, it has to be mined in another town, maybe Eagle Mountain, maybe up by American Fork Canyon or at the point of the mountain. Well, if they're one of the fastest growing towns and all their gravel and sand and building products comes through another town to get to their town, it's a lot more traffic. So a lot of times these mines are placed in an area so you can supply the people with the materials they need. And to my knowledge and what I believe, and I've been in this industry my whole life, we're not impacting their city. They moved in and they've moved around us, and we're fine with that. And we would love to work with them. We just don't want to be kicked to the curb. And for them to get a restriction on us to work only from 9 to 3 to haul in just trash. Well, do you realize that school is on a rotating schedule? So having a 9 to 3 schedule doesn't do anything but hold the trucks off to 9 right when the kids are going to school. And then we can haul all day. And when the kindergartens go at noon for their second half, the trucks are, they're so backed up because they know they only have a 6-hour day. I want you guys to think how you'd run your business with a 6-hour day. And I just want you to be sensitive to the people that are already there. And you guys have a great responsibility because you're running the county. We are in the county. And we generate a lot of money for the school kids. And just because more homes come in does not mean that we need to be kicked to the curb or let's not let you be able to expand your operation. Because our landfill, just so you guys know, is filling up old clay holes that were before my grandfather. And these holes are enormous. And these big holes are better than anybody's garbage pit anywhere because ours are clay lined. It's at the bottom of a clay pit. We don't impact, we don't make big mountains. And when it's done, we can't build homes on it, but Saratoga is going to be the beneficiary of some massive parks of these big reclamated holes. And more legislation or more teeth that they have. I mean, I spent $100,000 defending us the last time when I dealt with the city. I want to get along. I want to work it out. I just hope that you're sensitive to people that are already in business and that we do have an operation. We do have employees and there's a lot of business out there. And so I totally oppose Saratoga being able to get just what they want for their own town because all they're going to do is impact some other town. The traffic's going to be worse for everyone else. And so if you have any questions.
Are you opposed to changing the zoning to a grazing?
I am.
Even with you being grandfathered in?
If I get to be involved, and I apologize, I didn't know this meeting was happening until yesterday, like in the afternoon. Okay. My sister who runs the office says, hey, you probably need to be here. And so I just quickly came down. I don't know where they're proposing this G1, but we want to be involved. We don't want just this big overlay of land and then have all this control and legislation that we can't do anything about because our operation is probably a mile long. And I need to tell you one more thing. So a few years ago, there was a big fire out there that came off the Lake Mountains. They called it the clay pit or the dump fire. It had nothing to do with us, but the dump saved their homes because we were long enough as a fire break that when it roared off the Lake Mountains and rolled to the east towards their homes, without our operation, they'd have lost a lot of homes. But yet there's never anything good. It's just all of the negativity. So I just hope that we can figure out to work together and be involved, and so that we're notified if there's changes. And I just hope that you realize that there's also a mining division which generates money forever, and there's a real estate division that just guts the school kids. So if you can make money along the way, ground doesn't get less. Ground always gets more.
Right.
But they have a division of just trying to sell it. And when you get royalties year after year after year after year, that's what the purpose of the trust lands was. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. We've got one more.
Thank you. My name is Todd Cusick. I'm with CMC. I also represent Waldo that owns about 3,000 acres on this mountain in this area. All of that acreage is under our control, either through 30, 40, or 50-year leases. So we're going to be around for a while in this area. There was a question earlier about whether which lands you can control and not control. I was here a few years ago when a similar proposal came from Saratoga. I don't see this one as much different. They just tried to parcel it down just a little bit smaller. That proposal essentially would have created economically about a 25% gravel tax, I was calling it at the time. And they wanted a certain mile radius around their city for all mining. And if you just look at the transportation costs associated with doing that, that was essentially taking everything that you would purchase to produce the materials necessary that Saratoga requires in their building permits, and increasing it by 25%. And all of the raw materials, the road base, the rock products, the sand products, and so forth. And that's not even accounting for what Mr. Peck said in brick and things like that. So it was massive economic impact that I think was just very poor planning and very much no economic thought to it. There was a question about the land. I looked at the map. I was just notified last night too late on this. There's a good portion of this is BLM ground. Last time this came up regarding West Mountain, I'll just read one sentence from the BLM's position on this. If the county, and this does apply to West Mountain, but it's the same situation here with the BLM property. If the county does approve, and this is written by, this came to the commission on 11/29/17 from Matt Preston, the field manager for the BLM. If the county does approve this rezoning proposal, it is important to note that the BLM managed land would continue to be open for mineral extractions and future proposals for mineral extraction on the BLM managed lands on, in this case, West Mountain, would still be considered. And I would assume the same thing would apply here. I cannot represent the BLM, but there's a lot of BLM property on the map that I saw and only had a few minutes to look at it. Regarding how this affects us, understand that we're not on the map. We still have 3,000 acres nearby. It surrounds some of us, and Clay, in case you're wondering, it surrounds you too. It surrounds some of the property that we have, but we're just under 3,000 acres on this mountain. The gentleman earlier said that some of this growth depends on this mining activity. Let me correct him, it's all of it. They don't issue one building permit that doesn't require certain building codes and certain materials to be used. And those materials are not by choice where you want them. They're where Mother Nature left them. And wise planning requires that you look to see where the materials are geologically and plan around that. Though they were there a long time before any of us were there. And I can tell by looking at this map that there was no look geologically of what the materials are available there in these lands, because it's a blanket swath of the area. If you drive around the state and you generally notice that in our area along the Wasatch Front that these operations, sand and gravel mining, is at a certain elevation. Well, that's called the Bonneville shoreline, and you're going to see that this cuts right through there. Something else that cuts right through this area that doesn't appear to be taken into account is the Mountain View corridor. I know it was mentioned earlier, but there's a significant amount of material in the ground that should be used to build that corridor. The first leg of the Mountain View corridor was used with material from our pit, just in the south part of Salt Lake County, and it saved the state hundreds of millions or millions of dollars at that time, and over time will save hundreds of millions of dollars as the Mountain View corridor came through the Beef Hollow pit that we operated back in the late 2000s. So there's no thought to geology with this. The Mountain View corridor needs to be taken into account and looked how that possibly may create a buffer for these operations. Wise planning requires, I believe, that you look at the materials and the resources that are there and use the ones closest by. Mr. Peck made the point, these materials have to come from somewhere. If Saratoga wants to take the position that they're not coming from our city, they will then impact Lehigh, American Fork, and all the other cities where they will come from, and they will drive through in order to bring the materials there that they require on building permits that they issue. So unless they're going to stop issuing building permits, they are exacerbating the problem here. Near resources need to be used, or you are creating environmental impact with the traffic, with the emissions and everything else that's created by hauling these materials those great lengths when the material is right there to be used. I can take you out on a field trip if you'd like and show you the material. I have spent countless hours out there testing the material along this mountain and know it as well as anyone, geologically or otherwise.
Okay.
I made some notes here. Let me just make sure I've covered all the points here. I've covered all the major points, and I'm happy to come back and answer any questions at any time. But this seems like a lack of planning, not planning. The resources that are there should be considered. The Mountain View corridor should be considered. I didn't notice anything from the BLM. There was a large part of their land there. I think they should be consulted as well on this matter.
Okay, thank you. All right. That concludes our presentation and discussion on that item. We'll move to item number 2, discussion on Greenbelt procedures. Commissioner.
I've invited Vic Devano to come and present some of the questions he has about contiguous land that he's trying to have addressed on a future Board of Equalization. And Vic, I think you can present this about 5 minutes or so, not much more than that.
Right. I've got a pass out I can give you that goes with dates and things like this, but in 2019, it was just kind of the beginning of a tumultuous period in American history. And as we discovered COVID and we went forward and as we know, in March of 2020, we've all been going through a great revamp and change in our country, especially financially, jobs, and everything else that is going on. I only have a small parcel. We're talking about less than 7.5 acres that's been there in Spanish Fork, was in the county for years, only for, and I took it over and bought this in 2005, and from some good friends who I also bought from them 12.5 acres, and then traded that with Spanish Fork City to build their new Justice Hall and Police Department just west of their old historic building that they use. So what happened is in 2019, there's 2 parcels that make this up. It's a 4.6, and the other one is about 2.4, 2.5, which makes just a little about 7.12 acres. And it's located now in the city, which up to 4 years ago, there was a little triangle in there in a box that actually was still in the county, which we were. And then Arrive Homes came in and built to the west. We had another developer build some decent places to the east of us and to the south. So this is just a piece that we're talking about that has been farmed. It was originally pulled, the farming has been farmed for a long time. I've been out there for about 45 years doing different things. But the Farm Belt was originally done in about 1984. And it was done by Lucille Hallam, who the property then was sold to Jeff Thomas family, and that had the operations out there for sand and gravel also just to the south of the city. And then he wanted to move, but first of all, I built him his home. And the same home is existing on this 7.2 acres And about 2.4 of that was cornered off for the home, and then also be able to have the water. We have our own water, plus we also have strawberry water to water the area. So it's contiguous 7.2, but in the county, it's two contiguous separate pieces.
They're shoulder to shoulder, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So why don't you emphasize that piece then,
Yeah.
what you're trying to do?
So what we eventually will do here is we are going to develop it because it's really the last little piece down there between the subdivision. It makes sense to do that. And I've been buying some other pieces just further south to be able to farm. I enjoy farming. And what happened in 2019, though, is that unbeknownst to me, because of I was playing against a Russian team in basketball, and I was hit in the head, and I was hospitalized 9 days, and I had renal failure for about almost 3 weeks, in addition to a massive concussion. I then had talked to Chris, who's the county assessor at that time, and they had asked me to file some different things, and I filed with the state originally. I didn't get any cooperation. I don't know why that Diane and Bert have decided that I'm a bad apple, and I'm just going to say that right out front because I used to have a great relationship with Bert 5-10 years ago or whatever, but I have a couple little parcels that are my last little pieces. So all I want to do is do my farming, which we have done, and we've had days and years when our allocation has not been great, but there's a caveat to this. 12 years ago, my farm was broken into, and they devastated the interior of $50,000 of damage. My foreman came in and said, Vic, I'll be happy to go ahead and redo this over a period of time, putting in $3,000 to $4,000 or $5,000 a year, and then we can jointly share the farm with his animals coming in. He brings his animals in and out. So we've had goats, some sheep, we've had a few horses, some cows, and right now you'll go out there and about 10 days from now, you'll see that there'll be about 20 sheep that we put on a wire trap around there, and we section them off and they'll eat up the farm. About 9 years ago, I had jumbo pumpkins, and you wouldn't imagine how big those vines are. And we brought in 42 sheep, and in under 2 weeks, it was decimated. You would think that it was ready to be seeded. I mean, that's how these sheep and the goats can eat. So, but unbeknownst to me, and because of then COVID happening, I filed some different things in 2020 and 2021, and I have one of these for you guys to take back with you, just so you know it. And you'll be able to see that with these dates, they concur from 2019 of 9/3. When I got this, I was injured in October. And for the last 2 years, I can tell you, I look intelligent, but sometimes I'm stupid. And I can't help it. I'm with my neurologist will tell you, sometimes he thinks I'm speaking Russian or Chinese, and he looks at me and he says, you got to stop talking. I don't understand anything you're saying. And I try to stay coherent. I run a good business. I've got good people around me. So what I'm asking is they took me out of the Greenbelt wrongly, and because we are in the Greenbelt. But the problem of it is I was able to talk to Chris, the assessor, just before this meeting, and they stated, here they said approximately number of acres included in this notice is 4.64. The item number 9, why they decided to take it out was, does not meet productive requirements. Well, we've been farming the 7.2 acres with about a quarter acre with the house on it forever in different manners. And so, we've done, like I've told you, we've done pumpkins, we've done hay, which we did for quite a few years. There have been some dry years, but we still bring in the sheep at the end of the year, at the first of the year. And I'll be happy to, have anybody come out, Diane, that wants to see them or whatever. But this was, we did seed it, and we did have a crop in 2020 and 2021. We did it at the end of 2019. We tried to start, and it didn't take, because when you do the grumman, which is the high protein that we mix in with our hay and our feed, it has to be ground up. And so it looks like corn. A lot of people say, man, you're making corn.
Well, Vic, if you could consolidate that and email it to the three of us, that might be helpful.
Yeah.
And we could then pursue it.
Yeah, so I have this information for the three of you to show on that. What I'm asking you is to take a look that this was not done on the 2.4 acres. This was done on the 4.6 acres with the contiguous acres. And currently, we always keep a back section on the northeast corner where we have about a quarter to half an acre where we let weeds and the alfalfa and the grommet and the corn grow up, and then we have the animals come on in and usually clear that out depending upon what we have. And so we do that in the same calendar year.
Go ahead. We can't take action at this point, but send that information if you would.
I will.
Thank
So
you.
I appreciate your time. If there's any question at all or anything on it, I mean, so I think it's, when you see the documentation, I think you'll see that it's from 2019 to 2021, what ended up happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The last thing.
Oh,
We must protect the rights of the individual. We must have communication. Richard, I don't see Richard here today. Well, Richard is back there. Richard, I dealt with Richard. How many years, Richard, did we deal in Spanish Fork City? Forever. But Richard will tell you, I worked with the city on doing some new water lines, doing some new sewer to start to go up to the east side and everything else. And even though we may differ once in a while, I think we always had an open line of communication. In BOE, sorry, it's not there.
Okay. All right, that's the end of our discussion on item number 2, work session. Item number 3, discuss and propose ordinance to amend section 604, 6.04 related to approval of a water and sewer disposal facility. And I'm assuming, Bryce, that you're going to start us with this one.
Bryce Armstrong, Community Development Staff. How much time do you want me to keep this to? I'll promise I'll follow it.
I'll just give us the Reader's Digest version.
I'll just tee it up real quick, and then maybe some others that may want to comment. So as you're aware, this is an item that's been before you several times. There's been a process that was initiated last April. Well, its origins were in the beginning of the year. I won't go through all of that. I think that's been well documented in previous meetings. The last meeting we had on this, it was continued to this date for both a work session and an action item, agenda item. And in the interim, staff has the opportunity to meet with you each individually and just kind of get some feedback and kind of where we're at. We haven't made any specific changes to the proposal that was recommended by the Planning Commission. Maybe what I can do is just take 2 minutes and just kind of review what is proposed before you. The Planning Commission recommended a amended version of your original referral to them regarding approvals of both water facilities and sewage facilities anytime a person comes in for a permit. We have that already in place. This was taking and expanding that to address some concerns or issues that were brought up that apply to the county, but also specifically Hobble Creek Canyon a little more acutely. The proposal, and we've got it, I can pull it up if I need to, but it should be in your backup, really composes 3 main points. The first point is that this new proposal would require an acknowledgement and a disclaimer in a form that is approved by the county attorney's office, which gives notice of the potential determination or reduction of a person's source of water or the rights associated with their source of water. And also it releases the county from any damage, liability, obligation, or loss that might subsequently occur because of that reduction. The one thing I just want to point out on this is there's also been a sample form that has been included in the backup. That form in its version is not specifically being adopted. That's just an example of how to meet that requirement. That form could change in each instance, as long as it meets the purpose of this proposal as determined by the county attorney's office. So there's some flexibility in the form itself. The idea is that there is a form that makes people aware of things that already exist. I don't think this form reduces anyone's water. It just makes them aware that there is a general adjudication that applies to the county, countywide, which has not been resolved, which may determine, may is a key word. And then also any determination made by the state. Hobble Creek Canyon specifically has had a water distribution system created that may also have some limits. And so it's just making people aware that that exists And if they want to move forward with their building permit, which triggers this, then they are doing that kind of at their own risk, for lack of a better term. Okay, so that's that first part, and that would apply countywide in the current proposal. No, Section B, subsection B of the proposal, it just kind of restates what's already implied in the ordinance. Basically, if you lose your water, you got to replace it. It kind of clarifies what that would look like. So I won't spend a lot of time on that. And then subsection C is specific to Hobble Creek Canyon. The main part of this relates to having an additional requirement of an expert statement that the applicant would need to secure and provide at the time of the permit. That expert could be an engineer or an attorney. That expert goes and verifies that the proposed source of water or the rights associated with that source of water will provide the capacity and the capability and flow and all of the requirements for that desired use, including analysis of any distribution systems or any other actions that have been taken. And so that kind of puts it on the applicant to have that statement secured by. We'll add some time and cost to the application process. So in our discussions with the commissioners individually, I think there's been some concern on that latter, the C, the statement. And so if it's the consensus of the commission to move forward with this, but try and alter this to address that, I think the easiest way would to approve the proposal, including A and B, and just cut out C. A would still require a disclaimer form for everywhere in the county, and then B is the replacement water. Everything else in C would be captured in subsection B, other than the expert statement.
Yeah, I agree with that approach, because it's basically we're just reinforcing what's already been provided in the past, and so C might be redundant. That's my thought about it.
Anyway, that's a thought for if that's the route you want to go. That might be the easiest way to accomplish that. I can answer any questions. I know there may be some others that may want to speak.
So I want to clarify. A and B is notification status, where we're basically just notifying that there's concern up there, and we want all that are that are going to be building, potentially building up there, to realize that when they come in for a permit, there's going to be a notification. That's what A and B basically talks about.
One point of clarification: A and B would apply countywide as proposed.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, that's what A and B. So there's either way, there's a notification that that there's that the county's not necessarily responsible for the water side of it, but it's just a notification.
Yeah,
and if we get rid of C is the one where there's costs involved, where you have to go out and get engineers and others that have to do that. And so, I know there's a second part that you're going to get to on this, but that's A, B, and C so far.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually all I was going to get to. So unless you had some specific questions, but that's kind of the proposal as it's been recommended to you from the county planning commission, and kind of some of the discussions that we have captured in our last meetings and meeting with you.
So we haven't talked about existing and remodels.
Yes.
And so I think you need to
Yeah.
continue.
So the way it's currently written is that would, for any permit coming in that utilizes a water source, whether it's an addition, a remodel, or a new structure. There has been some discussions amongst the commissioners of maybe limiting that to just new construction. And if that's the case, then we can insert that, in the proposal to clarify that. There's maybe been some discussion that that can be handled through the disclaimer form, because we can have different types of disclaimer forms as it relates to the type of structure that's being proposed, whether it's a new construction utilizing a brand new water source or an existing. Because the potential of having a elimination or reduction of your water still exists if you have an existing home, and the idea is to let people know before they sink in more investment into their property.
Yeah, that would be my preference. If they're getting a permit for a remodel, but it's an existing structure, I think we should still notify them so that they're aware. I think it's a great opportunity for us to notify. But if there's already a structure there, I have an issue with us preventing them from doing work on an existing structure. The structure already exists. It already has its water rights. The state could still restrict those, and there's nothing we can do about it. But I think in an existing structure scenario, I would prefer that we just notify them, but not actually suspend permits or prevent permits.
So in the proposal, if C was cut out, that's basically all we'd be doing. That would be for every permit, including remodels. They just would be signing this acknowledgement form and waiver form along with their permit, recording that on the property, and then that's all that would be required.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is the waiver form, if we eliminate the whole expert statement specific to Hobble Creek Canyon, so we're just talking about the A and B, then is that going to apply to every permit that comes in that utilizes a water source, whether it's existing or new, similar to what Amelia just referred to?
I agree. Whatever we do, Hobble Creek should be countywide, and that way there's no ambiguity in the future.
Sure.
So to me, it seems that we've already established whether or not there's water and how much is available at the first instance when they bought the lot. And if they need to be notified that there's been a change to that from the state, then we can then subsequently send that to them, whether or not they're doing anything with the property, so that we're aware of it. And that C might not be needed in this
I don't think we would be the ones to notify them. That
No.
would be the state.
No, but as they go through the permitting process to buy land or to build, that will come up.
So what you're referring to would be the subsection A. When they obtain their permit, they will be signing this waiver acknowledgement form, waiver form, and recording that on their property. So they would actually be in possession of that, and we'd have them record that on their property before that permit was issued.
That they've been notified.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. That they're aware, that they acknowledge that these pending actions are in place, and they may result in a reduction of their water. And then that they waive any county liability for allowing them to go forward.
Yeah, because it's not just these locations, but it's also citywide. All the cities are affected by the level of water, and that's what the governor's emergency statement was about a couple of times this past summer.
The general adjudication applies to all of the county.
Right.
The distribution system that was just created this year, and we have representatives from that system here that can answer any questions relative to that, that's specific to Hobble Creek Canyon, and that's kind of a different aspect of the adjudication.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the state specifically call out Hobble Creek Canyon as one area that they know? There was a general statement that the state has oversold water rights and there may be issues. But didn't the state specifically call out Hobble Creek Canyon to say that it has been oversold and that's one of their priorities?
Yes, I believe so. I think that's the purpose of them creating this distribution system to kind of address that more immediate, because that's one of the areas of most concern in the county. Did I answer enough on the existing versus new?
Right.
Okay. We'll be here for any answers or any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. And I know there's going to be individuals who will want to speak. We'll have to look at our time and see what we'll want to allow for that. And so hopefully we can be concise on it. Before we get to that, and how many people want to make comment, just for reference point? Just a couple? Okay. Two online as well. And I know this kind of all bleeds together in a lot of ways, this discussion, especially about water. And the last time we were here, I was asking a lot of people about solutions, what solutions might be. And as we're involved in this conversation, there's a couple of things, and I'm glad the state's here, Scott. It's good to have you here. And we got Springville Irrigation here, and I have talked with some of the city managers, city members as well. I just wanted to throw this out as a conversation piece, and I'm not saying that it's perfect, but I think that if we all work together on the water issues up in specifically in Hobble Creek, I think there's a way we can move forward and get some things done to where it doesn't turn into just a full-blown fight. And so I'm going to just throw some of this thoughts out as I've been talking and trying to find solutions to it. And I believe that if we're all willing to give a little bit here and there, county, state, city, if we're all willing to kind of to maybe sit around a table and have a discussion, we might be able to get something. So I'm going to throw it out really quick. If the state would be willing to allow for change order forms from one property to another, that would be a big deal. That would be very helpful. That's one area. And if Springville, the irrigation company, if they do not require that 50% reduction from May 1st to November 1st, there's some flexibility in there. And I think Albertson, I thought I saw him in here. So there's another area that maybe we can look at. If the county will look at its 2.95 requirement, maybe adjust that down to the 1.4 so that we can find some flexibility in there for requirements. And if Springville City or others are willing to sell a share or whatever it takes to then be able to be transferred around, then somebody like somebody that's distributing water, if they're willing to buy that share so that we can have that water, I think there's opportunities for us. I would like to have conversations on solutions more than just finger pointing back and forth and saying it's their problem. And so I told you that I'd have at least some of these conversations, and not that they're perfect. I'm not claiming that, but at least start with maybe some possibilities where we can find a way to make this work. And I'm hopeful that there's some possibilities there. Don't know if it's totally possible, but I'd at least like to have that conversation. So with that, we said how many people? Was there 3?
There was 2 here.
There was
and
2?
2 online.
And 2 online, 4? Okay, so what's, I know this is a complicated issue. I wouldn't mind giving just a little bit more than the 2 minutes, commissioners. 3 minutes each. Is that workable? Are you representing more people?
The entire HOA, and so if I'm not going to take a long time, but 3 minutes is going to really kind of push it. I promise I can cover what I need.
3? How about if we go 5? 5-ish? Okay, let's try to go 5 then, and then that'll give us 5, 10, 15. Okay, let's do that.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Corbin Gordon. I represent the Cottages and Hollow Creek HOA. If I can have everybody who's from that raise your hand so you can see, stand up. Vast majority of the people who are here right now deeply concerned about what's happening. Thank you, everyone, for coming today and supporting. I want to address 2 things. What I perceive to be a couple of problems with what's being proposed in 6.04. And then we sent an email to you several days ago with some things that we're proposing that I think would be very helpful. I want to emphasize that we're here to be a part of the solution. We're not here to point fingers. And just to give you a little bit of my background, I practice in Heber. I represent Midway City, a bunch of irrigation companies, special service districts. I've practiced water law for 20 years. My hope is that some of my experience can help in this process. So let me explain first some of the concerns we've got with 6.04, which will lead into some of the suggestions that I have that we can maybe fix that. A little bit of history. The Cottages was approved in 1999 for 35 lots. A water right was turned in at that time that was sufficient to meet the needs of 83 domestic connections. Unique to this one, and I'm not familiar with everything up that canyon, but unique to this one, there was an agreement that was entered into between the county, the developer, and the HOA called a Maintenance and Open Space Preservation Agreement, wherein it was agreed that there would be a water system that would provide the water in the area. This is crucially important to some of the problems with 6.04, okay? The owners in the HOA are customers of a water company that's held privately. They don't own any water rights, and they don't own a system. And that creates a real problem for them when we start talking about what you're asking them to do in 6.04. So for example, of the 35 lots, 14 of them are already built. There's still 21 that needs to be built. Okay, so let's just walk through the process. Let's say one of these individuals who haven't built comes into the county and says, I'm ready, I want to build. Okay. Under 6.04, based on what you would require them, they come in and you say, well, you've got to verify for us the water rights that you own and demonstrate to us that you've got sufficient water rights to provide the needs for your home. One problem is they don't own water rights. And the water rights that they have a right to receive is from a service contract. And the real entity that you would be looking to, not to the private homeowner, is Hidden Creek Water Company, who actually owns the water right. So that creates a real problem. The second one is then saying, hey, if your system goes bad or something happens, you've got to replace the system. My clients don't own a system. They're customers to a system, and they're customers to a company that is privately held. It's recognized as a public water provider, but because it's privately held and they're not shareholders, that company doesn't really have a lot of obligation to give them the type of information that you would even need to make those types of representations, right? And so what we're creating here, and these are probably unforeseen things, and this may be a very unique situation, but it's something we need to think about. You're taking individuals who bought lots that were approved as buildable by the county, right? They're ready to go, they want to build, and they come in, and if you say, make these representations, they're going to say, I don't own a water right, I don't own a system, there's no way I can sign this. And what have we done? We've taken an approved lot, and we have removed all of its value. And then we get into the very scary, ugly area of potentially a taking, which is not what we want and not where we want to go, and is probably something that you would consider an unintended consequence that you haven't really thought about, okay? I could see 6.04 working if you went to the water company. And I don't know how many water companies are up there. This is frankly kind of weird, and when you have private entities providing these types of things, it's a problem and maybe something we're going to need to talk about in the future to try to fix it. But it shouldn't be the private owner, because that's like coming to Springville City and saying, I want to hook onto your municipal system. And they say, well, that's fine. Audit the entire system, get all the information you need, and come back and tell us that we've got sufficient water to meet your needs. Well, no, that's not how it works. So the responsible party under the service agreement is the water company. And the HOA is a party to that, and so is the county. And so it's the water company that really should be the one that should be looked at. And so is this process, it talks about how you have to have an approved potable water supply facility. I think what I would propose is, what we need to do is go through, and I don't know, is Hidden Creek Water Company considered an approved potable water supply facility under this? If it is, then we should be able to go through that process. That company's the one that should be signing these obligations, because it's the one that owns the system and owns the water rights. And once we have that approved and everything is good, then the owners come in and they apply and they build, right? And if there's a problem, then the county can come in under the service agreement and hold the water company responsible. So I just want to point out that there's some problems here, and probably this may be a unique situation, but it just doesn't work. I certainly don't have a lot of answers to what we need to do. I want to work on those, but I know that this isn't the answer, because this creates a real problem for my clients that I don't think is what you want to, that's not what you're trying to accomplish. I think we can sit down and work through and look at the specific issues up there, and get something that does work, but I don't think this works. Finally, I just want to walk through briefly.
Can I ask you a question?
Oh, sure.
It's Royce.
No, it's Corbin Gordon.
Oh, Corbin. Okay,
Yes.
Corbin, sorry. So is it, I mean, in looking, I understand where you're coming from in looking at the version that we have, that came out of our planning commission with it. But from our conversation that we're having up here, which is a little bit different when we're saying we're going with A and B, or looking at A and B, which is basically a notification process to builders or owners as they go through a permitting process and saying, hey, there is some concerns up here. We're notifying you as a county. Is there a problem with that, a notification to somebody who's coming in for a building permit?
Notification, probably not. I would look at my clients, if someone was coming in and saying, you have rights under this service agreement with this water company to receive water service.
But there's difference between rights and shares, and
I understand all of that.
Right.
I understand,
Okay.
But you're asking them to give up potentially some of the rights that they have. If the water company has a situation where the adjudication takes some of their water, then the water company is going to have to deal with that, and they're going to have to deal with that contractually between you, the county, and the individuals they're supposed to supply.
I want to clarify. That's actually not a contract with the county. It's with the state. The state controls water rights. We actually don't have any control over those water rights. What we're merely saying is if we give you a permit to build, we don't want you to sue us if the state takes away your water rights.
And I guess the question
And
is,
so in that case, the water company would go. So what we're basically doing is just telling people if you own, whether you're in the cottages or outside of the cottages, if you are building, we're just putting you on notice that the state has said that water shares in this canyon are oversold, and there's a good chance that some of them are going to get restricted.
If we go with the A and B
Right.
only.
If we go with
right?
the A and
It's
B
just a
only.
notification.
So if the water company wanted to sue somebody, we wouldn't be involved with that. If the state takes away their water rights, the water company would go after the state, not us. So we want to
and
clarify that.
potentially, there's a lot of different moving parts here. Under the service agreement, you as the county have the right to go in, and it says specifically you can shut them down if they're not doing what they're supposed to do. So you do have a dog in this hunt because you approved a subdivision with a private water supplier. And so if they don't do what they're supposed to do, you can hold them accountable. The HOA can hold them accountable. I think that the issues from an adjudication standpoint would be something that they would have to deal with, and so I agree with that. The thing I've
Just
got
to
a
clarify,
problem.
we wouldn't be the ones restricting the water rights. That
No,
would be the
absolutely
state.
not. No, you would be, if they come in and take the water away and suddenly they can't provide it, you under the agreement can then come in and say, hey, what are you going to do? You're going to have to, fix this, right? It's
We
not.
could, or the HOA could, or the property
All of those different things, right? Yeah. So I think that we're on the same page there. The one thing that I have a concern about is you're asking them to waive any sort of liability or declare.
Well, that's in the later section. That's not in the A and B that we're kind of mulling over.
I think that isn't B the one where you've got to come in and demonstrate the water rights.
No, that's C.
Is it? And maybe I'm just, and
Yeah,
that's
C
okay.
is the one where we ask you to demonstrate the water
A
rights
and,
with an
A
engineer
and
or a
B
lawyer.
is just notification.
A and B is just
basically.
notification that we're
Yeah,
putting you on
notification,
notice.
I have no problem
that
with
the
that.
state. Okay.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. As long as they're not waiving any rights and it's like you're telling them, hey, there's a problem
Right.
here, no problem at all.
We're just letting you know, hey, there's a problem in the future. This could happen. We don't have any control of it. We're just letting you know.
Oh, yeah, no,
So I
there's
think
no problem with that.
I get the sense anyway, we haven't voted on anything, but I get the sense that we're probably on the same page. I mean, we've had this concern all along on where that rides and how that's going to flow and what's the on the ground workings of it.
Absolutely. And so let me just briefly, 1 minute, I'm done, to walk through some of our suggestions on what we think we could do. And all my guys are asking for is just a spot at the table. They've waited, and now they're like, okay, we've hired an attorney. We just need someone to come and we just want to have an opportunity to work with everyone and be a part of the discussion. Here's some of the things that we would ask you to consider. Number one, because this is a private water company up there, to pass a policy that would allow us to get the information that we need. If we were a shareholder, we could make those requests, but we're not, and so they can kind of stonewall us, and I don't think that that's fair.
How does the county have any teeth in that? I'm just wondering where.
I mean, it's an interesting question. I think that you could pass a policy, and I put it underneath here. I think you could pass a policy that says any private water company in our county is required to appear before the county commission once a year and make a specific report, and the information that we would normally be able to get would be part of that report.
Or we could say that any private water company would need to provide this information to any potential customers.
You could do that as well. I mean,
right. So then they're legally obligated to provide that information.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would help.
Those are great solutions, Bo.
Another one that we do up in Wasatch County that's worked very well. Right now, this is being proposed to be under the health department. Frankly, water rights are one of the most difficult things. It's a really, ugly area of the law and hard. We've created what's called a water advisory board. And anytime that someone comes in and is dealing with anything from a new development, has to appear very first stop, Water Advisory Board. And that board has on it members from the irrigation companies, members from the county commission, all of the interested parties who would know. And they sit down, and the very first thing they do is make a recommendation as far as what water rights need to be turned over, and that travels with the application. We found that works very, very well. I don't know if you've got something like that here.
All right.
But one thing that you may want to consider.
I'm just gonna mention. Sorry to interrupt you, Commissioner Gardner's just got to step out for an emergency call. So
okay.
she's
No
just
worries.
for the record on
No
that.
worries. Thank you. So I would say that's something that if we're going to try to solve the problems up there, that could potentially help. Let's see here. The next one was, when we do developments up in Wasatch County, and once again, I don't know how you do it down here, but when you bring water rights in, most of the time we have them dedicated directly to either the county or the city. The city holds the water. And that way, and it's dedicated to that specific development, so it can never go away, never be sold, never, So when you buy a lot, you know that the water is associated with it, right?
Now, you're talking cities. Right,
cities and
so
counties. No, both.
The county does that too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So here what we had was a process where you said public water supplier, provide water, right? Water gets turned over. There's a bunch of water rights in this company. I don't know which water rights are actually dedicated to my client's subdivision. And their big concern is, well, are they extending? Can they sell them? What's happening? And they're worried that there's more connections that they want to make. And they just want to know that the water rights that were dedicated for their subdivision are there, that they can't be sold and they can't be altered or change applications or anything filed on them. And so one thing I would say is with these private water companies, if that hasn't been done, maybe a good idea to sit down and say, let's go through, do an audit, figure out specifically, and this becomes crucially important from a priority standpoint. Based on what I understand, everything in Hobble Creek now is a priority problem. And so whoever has the highest priority is going to have the best water right. Well, internal to, Hidden Creek, there's different water rights there. And which one got dedicated to which development and who's going to have the priority? This is going to be a problem, and it's something we need to sit down and I think we can probably resolve quickly, but something that just to be aware of would be a good thing to do.
I wonder if you were to continue that discussion with the Community Development Department.
Yeah.
And have greater discussion on that.
And I'm willing to sit down.
Because all we're able to do right now is hear.
Yeah.
But actually act, we really can't. And so these are valid points. I was wondering if it'd be better to have more conversation with community development and then bring that back.
Yeah, I'm just planting seeds tonight.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to sit down with anybody. There's only two other suggestions we had, and then I'll sit down. My HOA is willing to look at the possibility of reducing that 2.96, looking at ways where we can possibly free up some of that water. They're not opposed to that. Mm-hmm. So like I say, they're coming to the table they want water in their tap when they turn it on. The irrigation stuff, well, we may all have to hurt a little bit on that one and do something there, and they're willing to do that. So I just want to let you know that that's the case. And then lastly, from what we understand, there is ongoing communication with the state, and we would just ask that if there are, I would like to at least be there, have an opportunity to just understand and add anything that I can to try to help solve the problem. So based on that, thank you very much for your patience. I took a little bit of time, but thank you.
All right. We have another that want to come on up.